Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at an all-new AMD Ryzen AI HX370 powered mini PC. In fact, this is the cheapest one that we've seen so far, but don't get your hopes up because the price on these is still pretty high. But it is coming in lower than previous models that we've taken a look at, mainly because you can actually pick this up bare bones. And when it comes to the HX370, we usually see non-upgradable RAM, but this one uses SODIMM RAM, so you can upgrade it and it will go up to 96 gigs. Overall, it's a pretty good looking mini PC, and you know that a lot of these companies do need to add a little bit of RGB to make it a real gaming PC, and they've done that here. We'll take a look at everything in just a bit, but before we get into it, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by URCD Keys. I've been using this site for quite some time now. They offer Steam keys, Uplay, Ubisoft, but the main thing I pick up over here are Windows 11 Pro keys. And right now, if you use code ETA, you can get 25% off. So at checkout, we'll just enter the code ETA. That's going to bring the price down to $22.88. They're going to email you that key, and then you can activate Windows. Speaking of that, let's head over to a new PC that I recently built. As you can see, we're running Windows 11, and from settings, we're going to go to activation settings. It's going to tell us that we're not active. We don't have a key installed, so we're just going to paste it right in here, choose next. It's going to activate Windows for us, and we're ready to go. If you're in need of cheap Windows keys, I'll leave a link in the description. And remember, you can use code ETA for 25% off. Inside of the box, obviously, we get the mini PC itself. It also comes with a mounting bracket and all the hardware we need, a 6-foot HDMI cable, and a small form factor 120 watt power supply. Like I mentioned, this thing does feature a little bit of RGB. We've got that ring all the way around the case itself. It actually doesn't look too bad, but you know, I could have done without this. When it comes to I/O up front here, we've got a 3.5mm audio jack, two full-size USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, so these are 5 gig ports, but we've also got USB 4, and this is a 40 gig port. Not much going on around the sides here, but around back we've got our power input, another 3.5mm audio jack, one more USB 4 port, 40 gigs again, full-size HDMI 2.1, full-size DisplayPort 2.0, dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and two more USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports. In total, this mini PC will support up to 4 displays using HDMI, DisplayPort, and both of those USB 4 ports for video out. When it comes to the overall specs, like I mentioned, we've got that AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX370. I mean, this is a great Zen 5 CPU, 12 cores, 24 threads. We've also got the Radeon 890MI GPU, based on RDNA 3.5, and with this we get 16 compute units with a clock up to 2900 megahertz. We can add up to 96 gigabytes of DDR5 at 5600, and this is kind of what makes it cheaper than others. But keep in mind, with the other PCs that are using LP DDR5X, that's usually running much faster, up to around 7500 megahertz, and in some cases 8000. So iGPU performance here with that 890M may suffer just a bit, and we'll do a comparison when we get into testing. But getting in here to add RAM and storage is actually pretty simple, and I've added 32 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte drive. It's got a switch on the back, top pop right off. I've already taken the 4 screws out of the cooler up top here, and this is just the RAM and SSD cooler. It's got a little fan that'll blow some air across them. But once we get in here, you see we've got SODIMM RAM and two 2280 M.2 slots. You can add up to 4 terabytes of storage, 2 terabytes each with these, and 96 gigabytes of RAM. So first things first, wanted to check out this BIOS, and unfortunately it's a bit locked down. Now there are some key combinations for certain mini PCs that unlock the other advanced section. I've tried a few here, not exactly sure what it would be, but there's probably a way to get in here without using something like smokeless UMAF. And by the way, that'll actually allow you to access all of the settings. But from advanced, under CPU configuration, yeah, you can see we don't have any access to even change the VRAM. Not much at all here, so we'll just get into Windows and see how this thing performs out of the box. Okay, jumping right in here with Windows. As you can see, we've got that Ryzen AI 9 HX370. This unit has 32 gigs of DDR5, and of course we've got that Radeon 890MI GPU. And you can see we're actually up to 8 gigs of VRAM here. As we saw from the BIOS, there's no way to change it, but luckily from our AMD software, if we go to Performance, Tuning, Dedicated Graphics Memory, this can be changed all the way up to 24 gigs, at least with this 32 gig model. Out of the box, this is set at 4. I wanted to go to 8, so I just chose it here. You will have to do a reboot, but luckily we've got that option here. And I'm not exactly sure what kind of TDP this is going to be running at, so let's go ahead and stress this CPU out. We use CPU-Z, 54 watts. And when we get into gaming, I think this might be able to do up to 64. We'll put a load on that iGPU and check it out once we get in there. But at 54, the HX370 is a great performer for sure. Now, I wanted to get into some benchmarks, and the first one we have is Geekbench 6, looking great here with a single of 2,855. Multi of 14,882. So this is keeping up with other HX370 powered mini PCs, at least when it comes to CPU performance. But now it's time to take a look at some GPU performance. And again, we've got 5600 megahertz RAM here. 3D Mark Night Raid coming in with a 32,202. And to give you an idea on some other mini PCs out there with 7500 megahertz RAM, this score is coming in at 34,569 at the same TDP. I also ran 3D Mark Time Spy, and this gives you a good idea of how much more performance we can get from faster RAM, because after all, the iGPU is using system RAM as VRAM. At 5600 on this PC, we get a total score of 3,832, and on the same chip, but with faster RAM, 4,269. So it's a pretty significant jump, at least with this synthetic benchmark. But now let's get into some real-world gaming with this PC. The first one we have here is Cyberpunk 2077 1080 medium with FSR set to auto. This is how I run it on the 890M, and if you take a look at Afterburner, you can see that this does peg out at around 64-65 watts. When we did a test earlier, we were just stressing out the CPU. Now we've got that GPU to worry about. So yeah, this thing out of the box is basically a 64 watt TDP. Not horrible here at all. I mean, we're over 60, seeing an average of 64 medium 1080p with Cyberpunk 2077. Next one we have here is Spider-Man 2 1080 medium FSR frame gen on. That's how you got to run this game. And in scenes like this, you'll see it jump up to 130. But once we're in the city, this does dip down a bit. And without frame gen on, you can get by at 900p medium settings over 60. But frame gen really helps out, as you can see, seeing an average of over 80 FPS with this game. Next, we've got Forza Horizon 5 1080p medium, and to tell you the truth, it looks like we're seeing better performance over here with slower RAM than we were on other systems with much faster RAM. Not exactly sure what's going on. I don't know if the game was updated in between my testing or not, but it looks like we're getting a hike of 15 to 18 FPS. But on either system, this game does run at over 100 FPS. Checking out the built-in benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I test this every once in a while just to see what's going on with it. Medium 1080, we're only seeing an average of 51 FPS. Skyrim Special Edition 1080 high, and you'll see this is only at 58 FPS. That's from the new AMD driver. For some reason on all of these iGPUs, it stays right there at 58. So once that's ironed out, yeah, this is going to run at a steady 60. And the final game I wanted to test was Monster Hunter Wilds. Still pretty early here, but we're at 1080 low with frame gen on. Frame gen is kind of a must on these iGPUs with this game right now, and in the future I do see, getting a better frame rate at, let's say, 900p low settings with no frame gen. But since there's a lot of bugs in this game, we do need it, at least at the time of making this video. The final thing I wanted to talk about here were CPU temps and total system power consumption from the wall. Average 1080p gaming, this thing's sitting around 67 degrees Celsius, so we're nowhere near thermal throttle. And through all of my testing, benchmarks and everything, the highest it hit was 79. As for total system power consumption, this is measured from the wall with a kilowatt meter. At idle, it's only pulling 8 watts in total, and these HX370 chips are pretty efficient. 1080p gaming jumps up to an average of 77 watts, and the maximum that I could get this to pull was 98 watts, and that's flat out maxing out the GPU, 12 cores and 24 threads here. At the beginning of the video, I did mention that this is the cheapest HX370 mini PC that we've seen, and the bare bones model is coming in at $759 at the time of making this video, so it's still not a super cheap mini PC. But when you consider that other mini PCs with this HX370 are $940 up to $1,200 depending on the configuration, this is coming in cheaper if you've got storage and RAM already. But then you got to keep in mind that iGPU performance is going to take a bit of a hit here on that 890M due to the slower RAM. So in the end, it's always up to you, and if you're interested in learning a little more, I will leave links in the description, and if there's anything else you want to see running on this HX370 powered mini PC, just let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this one, and like always, thanks for watching.